And welcome to the annual AAPT, American Association of Physics Teachers, photo competition. This is something we've done every year, and this allows our students to look at the real world around them, explore the physics, and take a picture of it, talk about it, and we've actually submitted the contest annually and done pretty well. So that's our plan for this year. We're not going to lose this project, and we're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff about photography as well. I'm sure you've noticed around the various physics rooms, we've got these posters. The AAPT, there's our 2010. Look around your room, you'll see a lot of different posters. These posters show what we've done in the past, what other schools have done as well. If you look at them closely, you'll see about half of the posters have photos from Glenbard West. So this here is an example. Here we've got our Center of Mass from Elson Pixler, and this was quite a few years ago. But it's an example of how you take a picture in the real world and apply it to something you've learned in class or haven't learned in class and studied outside. The information about this, you can get a lot of stuff online. We've got our Google site, also links on it through Schoology, of course. And I'm not going to go through the whole site here. I believe one of the other teachers is doing a video on this part. But just to kind of touch on it, you see another sample of photos we've done. There's introduction, task, process, etc. So a lot of areas here that will give you useful information. For the moment, we're going to focus down here. The dates, we've still got to put the dates together for you, and the rubrics, how we're going to do that. The idea here is you're taking a photo, black and white or color, could be either, printing an 8x10 photo of this, submitting that with your paragraph of physics explaining it, and then we get to judge the competition. We'll find our best 15 here at Glenbard West High School. We'll send those 15 in to the national competition, and then they put those through another competition. The top 12 of which end up on the poster, and the next top 12 end up on a calendar. There's also prize money involved, so the winners actually get something out of that as well. The essay will be between 100 and 250 words. And you'll talk about some concept in particular. This is a research project, so you are going to have to look up sources, cite your sources, bibliography, that kind of thing. There's going to be a due date. That date might have been wrong. We had a fire in the school long ago. Even that will not stop this project from coming due. The rules will be covered elsewhere. I'm going to skip past all of these, and then we're going to get down to the photography part of it. You need to remember this is primarily a photo competition. It's a competition for how good a photo you can turn out is. Yes, you have to do the physics, and you have to recognize the physics, and there has to be some interesting physics visible in the photo. But it is a photo contest, which means you can't just have any old picture slapped out of a camera or out of a cell phone onto a piece of paper. So, look for good ways to get good photos. And there's a lot of tips we can offer you. I actually do photography on the side, so if you want to come by, talk to Mr. Medic. Happy to look at your photos with you and talk about them. So here's a couple of examples. Here we've got a couple of pictures at a roller rink. Took both of them, and it's pretty obvious the difference. The one on the left, you get a little bit of blur. The one on the right, pretty sharp. What I did on the right simply was a flash. Turn the flash on the camera. A flash on a camera is about 1,000th of a second, 1 millisecond. And in that time, a body doesn't move very far. So you get a very sharp, crisp image. When your camera, your cell phone camera, is on all its automatic settings, it tends to leave the shutter open longer to let more light in. And during that time, the body moves and you get blur. Therefore, you get all that blur you see on the left-hand image. There are ways around it without a flash. You can use manual control of your camera and set a very fast shutter setting. But when you do that, you have to make some other changes. You have to have a larger aperture. You have to have a faster ISO. And these are words that really don't make much sense on a cell phone camera. They don't tend to play with those settings. That's more of a SLR, single lens reflex camera. You know, the big kind of camera you see photographers walking around with big lenses. Some cell phones can do those kind of things, but not all of them can. So flash is usually the easiest way to get those locked images. Camera quality definitely counts. These days, cell phone cameras have gotten pretty good. Some have. I used to rail against them and say, hey, don't even bother with a cell phone, but they've gotten better. So take the picture, print an 8x10, go down to Walgreens, print an 8x10, see what it looks like. If it looks kind of grainy and blurry like the image you see here, it just means that the sensor and the glass on the cell phone aren't good enough. And when you blow that to an 8x10, you're going to get kind of a clunky picture. And it's going to be immediately ejected from the in-school competition. And the first thing we look at is it a blurry picture? If it's blurry, we're done. Move on to the next one. Okay? One thing you may not be aware of, when you take a picture with your cell phone and you look at the screen, the picture may look stunning. Remember, the camera in that phone is kind of designed to work on that screen and look really good on that screen, but the number of pixels on that screen are very small compared to how many you would need for a good 8x10 photo. So even something that looks sharp and crisp and clean on a cell phone screen, once you blow that up and print it, may not look anywhere near as good. So I highly encourage you to do a test print rather than waiting until the day before the project is due. Say, okay, this is the picture I'm going to use, go down, print it for the first time, and find out it looks like what you see on the screen. So you may need to plan ahead on that. Just make sure your camera is good enough. There are cameras, I think, digital cameras at the Merc, at least they used to be. We can check with that and see if those are still available. This one we're not totally sure about. If you look at the posters on the walls, not a lot of them seem to have people in them. So I don't know if it's just because there aren't as many pictures submitted with people in them, or if the judges tend to shy away from pictures that have people in them. Honestly, don't know in that regard. So if you have a choice between, hey, I want to do this picture with a person or without a person, I would actually err on the side of not having a person in it, if you can. Pick a subject. If there's a lot of stuff going on in the photo, you may not know what you're supposed to be looking at. The picture on the left, your eye is kind of drawn to the boy and the girl in the foreground. Over on the right, there's really no definite solid subject there. So you kind of want to separate it out a little bit better and make sure there's not too much going on that's going to distract the eye from what you're trying to focus on in your photo. Another good way to isolate your photo is backdrops. In this case, I just took a sheet and threw that down there and got the photo on the right. On the left, I just threw something on the counter and took a picture. You'd be amazed how many photos I've seen submitted to the contest, like on the left. Someone takes something, throws it on the dining room table, takes a photo, and there's stuff in the background that's just distracting. Picture on the left, wouldn't even consider it for the competition. One on the right, at least everything's isolated, you know what you're looking at. It still bugs me that I didn't iron that sheet first and you have those wrinkles in it. That still annoys me just a little tiny bit. One of the requirements that the AAPT puts on this photo competition is that the photos cannot be overly edited. So for example, you can't use Photoshop to edit things out of the photo, put things into the photo, so cutting and pasting is out. You can do minor cropping, and cropping is highly recommended. For most photos can be slightly improved by doing some cropping. In this case, you wouldn't be allowed to Photoshop out the wrinkles that are in the sheet, but you could bump the contrast a little bit, bump the brightness a little bit, because those are minor variations that you're going to get just for your basic lighting, and that's not really a problem. So be aware limitations on what you can do with the editing itself. As for how you should make the photo better with lighting, lighting makes a difference. I mean, here you see the photo on the left, the light was up and a bit forward of the image. On the image on the right, the light was actually directly above it, shining straight down. And it was a little bit brighter as well. The light was closer. Light gets closer, it gets brighter. Me personally, I like the photo on the right. I think it's a bit sharper, cleaner. They both have the double X, which is more interesting than the single, than a single straw. And the shadows are different, but the shadow on the left is more interesting. So really, that's kind of the beauty in the eye of the beholder situation. But they both stress that isolation of the image and show that lighting does play a very important part of it. And as a photographer, lighting is everything. The better the light, the better the photo. So definitely pay attention to where the light's coming from. Light coming in from a window is usually pretty good. That's what early photographers had to use, because they didn't have strobes, they didn't have flashes, so they'd use all the all the natural lighting they could. By the way, since all these pictures of straws sticking in water have been part of our examples here, please don't give us these. One of the really common refraction photos is a straw in a glass of water, and look how it looks like the straw is broken. Yes, we've seen it, and it's been submitted so many times. You do want to avoid cliche photos, things that show up over and over again. Just at this point, they're not that interesting, and if they even did make it to the photo contest, at the other end, they'd say the same thing. Oh, look, it's another bent straw. So avoid it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do a refraction photo, but it's got to be new, different, interesting. Go for unique. A lot of the stuff we look for is things we haven't seen before, or things we may have seen something similar, but the idea you came up with was way more interesting. So you gotta think outside the box a little bit and be imaginative, be creative. That definitely helps. And these are some pictures from past photo contests. Notice the ones on the two on the left are actually similar. They both show light refracting through a lens of a sort. One's a natural and one's contrived. And the one in the middle there, I like that. It's got the horizon line right smack dab in the middle. Makes it an interesting photo. The one on the left, you can't see the background. It's out of focus. But if you look in the water drop, you can see what that background is. The one on the right is actually a CD with candlelight reflecting in it. So you get some interesting effects. So stuff like that you can find just from experimenting. There's a lot of old contest winners online, so you can certainly look at those for inspiration. You don't want to just repeat them. I've definitely seen students submit the exact same photo that took first place the year before. That's an extreme show of lack of imagination. And it's not going to go anywhere. It just won. It was just in a poster. We're not going to do the same thing the next year. When it comes to reflection, reflection is one of the most commonly submitted photos. It's easy to see. You go outside, you look in Lake Ellen, you look in a puddle, you look in a mirror. Yes, reflections everywhere. And you can get some really cool pictures with reflection. I mean, look at this one. It's a nice photo. I like it. And I've seen some amazing reflection photos. The problem is, it's common. Really, really common. And unfortunately, most of the physics we get from students who do a reflection photo give us one sentence. Oh, look, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. And that's it. They don't get into why. There's no background on it. There's no research depth to it. It's quoting a sentence that is one of the most beginning sentences we get to with reflection. It just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't show any research whatsoever. And this is also a research project. So if you're going to do a reflection, it's got to be an amazing reflection photo. On top of that, your physics has to go deeper than incidence equals angle of reflection. It's way too basic. So yes, you might see something cool, but you can't just go across the lake, take a picture of the school reflected in Lake Ellen, and think you got an award-winning photo there. I assure you that's one of the most common shots we get. And again, your physics has to be better than just the angles. So obviously, aspects of photography include making things in focus, making sure the photos are bright enough that you can see what you're looking at, having a definite something to focus on. So this photo here shows a sailboat, shows winds, vectors. There's a lot of physics going on here. But there's something else photographers have to have sometimes, and that's patience. Because this is an okay photo. I took this during the photography field trip a few years ago. And while it's okay, because I wanted to get a sailboat on the lake, I decided to be patient. So I sat there for a while. And after a while, boats moved around, other things happened, and boats got closer. And once they got closer, I was able to get this shot. And this one's much better. Obviously, it was actually coming across my view, so the people were behind the sail. And I did take a picture of that. But then finally they turned, and I was able to get this shot. And that's what I'm much happier with. But I probably stood there for 10, 15 minutes waiting for a decent shot. So don't assume that you can walk up to something, take a photo, walk away, and think, I got the perfect shot. If things are moving around, be patient. Be willing to move lights around. Be willing to take the picture from a different angle. Don't settle on the first shot because quite often, with a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, maybe just moving positions around a bit, you might get something much better. Just remember, an amazing photo with a poor essay, it won't win the contest. We'll look at it, but it won't win. But a poor photo without an amazing essay, won't get read. We look at the photo and go, oh, that's nice, and we'll set it to the discard pile. Obviously, we will eventually read it, we will grade it, and things will go on. But if it's a poor photo, we won't put in our top 15. It won't get sent on to the competition. The in-school competition is tough. You've got 5 different teachers with hundreds and hundreds of students who are all doing this project. We get some amazing work, amazing photos. We've sent photos into the competition that we thought were just beyond compare. And then they didn't win. Sometimes they got beat by better photos. Sometimes they didn't, but maybe the physics was better on the other photos. But the ones we send in are good. So you're up against a really good crowd. And like I said, we do well in this competition. We're on the poster, which means we're in the top 12 on average about every other year. And there was one year we had 3 in the top 12. So we at Glenbard West are a force to be reckoned with in this competition. So we like the fact that you guys put so much effort into it, because it does really show. If you have any questions, obviously, email any of your instructors. If you have any photography questions, please feel free to email me, bruce_medic@glenbard.org. And there are a lot of tutorials online as well. Happy to help with the photo aspect of the photo contest. Good luck.